Many thousands of years ago, in your time, several races came to interbreed with humanity to give humanity a greater intelligence and adaptability. This led to the rather sudden emergence of what we understand is called modern man. This has given you dominance and power in your world. This occurred long ago. However, the interbreeding program that is occurring now is not the same at all. It is being undertaken by a different set of beings and by different alliances. Through interbreeding, they are seeking to establish a human being who will be part of their association, yet who can survive within your world and who can have a natural affinity with the world. Your visitors cannot live on the surface of your world. They must either seek shelter underground, which they are doing, or they must live aboard their own craft, which they often keep hidden in large bodies of water. They want to interbreed with humanity to protect their interest here, which are primarily the resources of your world. They want to have human allegiance assured, and so, for several generations, they have been involved in an interbreeding program which, within the last 20 years, has become quite extensive. Their purpose is twofold. First, as we have mentioned, the visitors want to create a human-like being who can live within your world, but who will be bonded to them and who will have a greater set of sensitivities and abilities. The second purpose of this program is to influence all those that they encounter and to encourage people to assist them in their undertaking. The visitors want and need human assistance. This furthers their program in all respects. They consider you valuable. However, they do not consider you to be their peers or their equals. Useful, that is how you are perceived. So in all whom they will encounter, in all whom they will take, the visitors will seek to engender this sense of their superiority, their value and their worth, and the significance of their endeavors in the world. The visitors will tell all whom they contact that they are here for the good, and they will assure those that they have captured that they need not fear. And with those who seem particularly receptive, they will attempt to establish alliances, a shared sense of purpose, even a shared sense of identity and family, of heritage and destiny. In their program, the visitors have studied human physiology and psychology very extensively, and they will take advantage of what people want, particularly those things that people want but have not been able to gain for themselves, such as peace and order, beauty and tranquility. These will be offered, and some people will believe. Others will simply be used as needed. Those extraterrestrial visitors who have been potentially positive for humanity all have retired from the world in view of meddling. All those who remain are alien races that are not here for our good. This leaves us in an unambiguous situation regarding the extraterrestrial presence. This makes us able to clearly see who we're dealing with. Otherwise, it would be impossible to distinguish friends from enemies. The governments of the world have been seduced in many ways. They have made contracts with the intervention, which the intervention has violated. And now there are those within the governments of the world who are aware of the intervention and who support it. And there are those who are aware of it and who oppose it. So the seeds of conflict and opposition have been sown within the corridors of power within your nation's governments, many of them. The intervention is being carried out by physical beings who are driven by the same needs that drive humanity: the need for resources, the need for power, the need for wealth, and the need for strategic advantage. It is these very things that drive all nations in the universe. You must not regard these beings as evil or demonic or as angelic. They are beings driven by the same needs that drive humanity. It is important now that we address the question of how the intervention is functioning within the context of the three primary requirements that humanity must meet and must utilize in order to become a free race in the universe. The intervention does not value freedom. It is unknown among participants. It will therefore seek to oppose or undermine any progress that humanity will attempt to make regarding these three fundamental requirements. Human unity will be opposed because a unified human family will be very difficult to influence. Human conflict can be so easily antagonized, increased, and directed. The intervention does not want to see humanity unite in facing the greater community. Therefore, human conflict will be encouraged, particularly by those hybridized individuals who have assumed positions in advising human leaders. It is their advising roles that have the most influence here. These are not individuals that you will see, for they are not public, they are hidden and well placed. However, they have their opponents within governments, for there is a struggle going on within the secret corridors of government, and that is why the intervention has sought to influence commercial powers even more than government officials. For commercial powers are governed by greed. They seek wealth, power, predominance, and advantage over their rivals. They do not have public scrutiny and are not accountable to people at large, and so they are much more likely candidates for the plan of the intervention to gain human representatives and human liaisons. Human unity will be opposed by the intervention, for a united humanity will oppose intervention. It will become increasingly resistant to any attempt by any foreign power to gain access or advantage here. That is why the emphasis for the intervention is to amplify human crises, human conflicts, human disagreements, and to encourage the proliferation of weapons, to lead humanity further in its own self-determined path of destruction. A weakened humanity will be vulnerable to persuasion, and a weakened humanity will be more likely to respond to offers of technology, to offers of assistance in governance, and to offers of becoming connected to trade networks that already exist in the universe. If humanity declines, it will be hard for either your leaders or your peoples to turn down offers of technology and resources that will be provided for you, offers that will surely undermine your self-determination and make you dependent upon networks of trade, commerce, and power over which you will have no influence or control. These activities are not evil in the sense that you might think. They represent competition, and competition is part of nature. If you are to be powerful, others will compete with you. If you possess wealth, others will compete with you for this wealth. If you misuse the world, others will seek to take advantage of this for themselves. And if you remain divided, others will try to use that to their advantage. Regarding resource depletion, the intervention will support the overuse of those resources that you rely upon for your basic energy requirements, for they do not need these resources. The depletion of these resources will further hasten humanity's conflicts and decline. Therefore, the overuse of such resources and people's desire to maintain their current behavior will be encouraged. A foreign agent here would need only encourage you to do what you have been doing all along, for practical reasons, to maintain wealth and power, to maintain your nation's stability, and to maintain its predominance over other nations. These agents will provide this advice to your leaders, and especially to the leaders in commerce, who always will seek profit and advantage. Since the intervention represents commercial forces, they are particularly focused on aligning themselves with human commercial forces in your world. Here, they share a common purpose and many common methods, and they can appeal to individuals who have the focus and the intent. Who amongst the powerful and the elite in your commerce and trade within this world could refuse the offer of advanced technology and refuse the offer of proprietary rights to something that none of their rivals possesses? Who could refuse the opportunity to engage in trade and commerce with powerful forces beyond this world? Leaders in commerce are not accountable to the public, to the people of your world. They are not scrutinized. Their positions are secure. They do not need to win public favor in order to proceed in their search for power. Who amongst them will refuse the offers of advanced technology and trade with other nations and the wealth, power, and advantage that such engagements might promise? Even your religious leaders will be encouraged to align themselves with the intervention. They will be encouraged to believe that the intervention represents advanced life forms, morally and ethically advanced, beyond anything that humanity has established, and that humanity must turn to them now for inspiration and for guidance. These religious leaders will be led to believe that the intervention is here as an act of providence, an act of God, to safeguard humanity and to assure its future. It is their beliefs and their emphasis that will be exploited here, for they are not able to see clearly and discern the meaning and the reality of the greater community. Amongst those who are rebellious and who seek to foster revolution, the intervention will give them inspiration. It can whisper in their minds. It can present images in front of them, images of their saints, images of their gods, images of the righteousness of their cause. These individuals who cannot distinguish a greater community presence from a spiritual manifestation will not be able to resist. Now they will feel they have divine will and support for their political goals. Now they will feel justified in taking any action, no matter how destructive, in order to fulfill their beliefs and their sense of justice. None of these inspirations comes from a divine source, for the creator of the universe would never support human conflict, or a conflicted race of beings living in a beautiful world that is valued by others. This conflict represents a critical advantage to an intervening force. Here, a much smaller force can overwhelm a much greater force. The collectives are a very small presence in the world, and yet they can have great advantage here, encouraging governments to take actions not in their best interest and encouraging conflicts that will only lead both sides to a greater decline and impoverishment. They can promote the use of the world's resources in such a way that would only lead to humanity's decline and the collapse of societies, and even civilization itself. The intervention is exploiting your weakness, and that is why you must cultivate your strength. You must see that your predispositions towards conflict and division are inherently self-destructive, and render your position weak and vulnerable in the face of the greater community. Human unity and cooperation will be essential for humanity's future if you are to remain and to grow as a free race of peoples in the universe. The intervention will oppose this, for that will counter its goals and even its presence here in the world. Regarding the issue of discretion, the intervention wants to know everything about you, how to govern your views, how to motivate your feelings, how to stimulate your emotions, how to make you behave in the ways that it wants you to behave. For control of the human mind and perception is essential to its ultimate goals of governance in this world. Human discretion, therefore, runs counter to the intervention's objectives and will be discouraged. Only in keeping the intervention's secrets will humanity's discretion be supported. Only in hiding its agenda and forgetting what individuals have been told and the often brutal experiments that they have been subjected to as they were taken from their homes and their families against their will. Here, forgetfulness will be encouraged, even with threats of violence. The intervention does not want the human population to know its real activities and its real intent. It does not want to see humanity become more powerful. It does not want to see humanity gain insulation from the greater community. For the intervention is here to establish dependence and cooperation. This is their pathway to success, a pathway that is not being sufficiently resisted within your own world. The power of knowledge is the sacred intelligence placed within each individual. The power of knowledge is unknown to the intervention, for if it were known, there would be no intervention, and such unethical behavior would not be attempted. The greater powers of humanity are not being used, and humanity is being encouraged to behave in ways that are not in its best interest. While it is true that humanity could commit all of its errors on its own, to have the support of the intervention only makes the hazards greater. This is being done in a completely hidden way. The intervention will present itself to its believers and its advocates as a benign and spiritual force. In reality, it will be supporting the very forces that undermine humanity's integrity, its unity, and its self-confidence. The intervention will undermine people's belief and confidence in their leaders and their institutions, thus fostering a vacuum of confidence that can easily be shifted to a foreign power that is presenting itself as a benign and advanced race. This is the nature of deception that is placed upon a weak and divided humanity, a deception generated by several competing groups of economic collectives who seek to have advantage here. Such activities and deception have been used by humanity as well, so these are understandable to you. Technology only aids the intervention in remaining hidden and giving it certain powers over people's physical response to their presence. It is the power of persuasion in the mental environment, the power of making people think what the intervention wants them to think, to feel what the intervention wants them to feel, and to do what the intervention wants them to do, that represents its greatest strength and advantage here. The intervention cannot use force, and it is not a military presence, so it does not have this capability. It will use its greatest strength, which is the power of persuasion, and it is using this to great effect. It has not won its objective yet. It has not achieved its goals yet, but every day the intervention grows stronger. Every day its influence becomes more pervasive. Every day its effort to pacify human resistance and to direct human activity increases, for it seeks to pacify those who would resist it and to encourage human conflict at the same time. The intervention is here to encourage the loss of faith in human leadership and human institutions. It is here to strengthen its presence as the saviors of humanity. Whether the reins of power would be given to it publicly and visibly, or whether it would occur behind the scenes, the intervention needs tremendous human assistance and support. It must do this to satisfy those who are watching its presence here from afar, and it must do this to gain ascendancy in the world without destroying the world's resources or endangering their ultimate goals here. You have the power to resist this. You have the power to resist this and many other forms of intrusion that will be attempted in the future. Humanity does not know its own strength, and that is why it is so vulnerable. Humanity does not recognize its advantage in living in a highly populated region of space where military conquest is not allowed and where war and violence are rare. You do not realize the advantage this gives you. If you raise your voice against the intervention, it is put at risk. If you oppose the intervention, if enough people can do this, the intervention must withdraw. You are living in a world of tremendous natural diversity and biological resources. Those who are intervening in your world today are not interested in the resources that you hold most dear. They are interested in biological resources, particularly those resources that represent the building blocks of life: genetic agents, chlorophyll, blood, and plasma. These are the things that are valuable and are greatly needed in a universe full of barren worlds. Some of this represents illegal trade that is not allowed for ethical reasons, but trade that exists nonetheless. Rare metals are also sought here, metals that you are aware of and metals that you are not aware of. These things must be mined with human assistance. Anything that a foreign race seeks to do in this world must have significant human assistance. This is because of the biological barrier that this world presents to the universe and to those races who have evolved in sterile environments, who are not adapted to be in biological, terrestrial environments such as this. Because worlds such as this are very rare, there are very few races in the universe who have this adaptation. That is why the native races must be cultivated and genetically aligned with the intervening races. It is a time-consuming process, but the results are believed to be worth it by those who are engaging in such activities. The intervention is of two kinds. There are resource explorers, which nearly always represent one race, operating with great freedom and impunity, which are clients of larger powers. Sometimes they are clients of independent trading networks that are engaged in illegal trade. Those resource explorers who have been in your world and who are in your world today represent members of this group. Then there are collectives who are multiracial, hierarchical, and very well organized. Their worker classes are bred for specific purposes, and they are involved in collective breeding, which is a practice not all advanced races are engaged in. The collectives seek a more permanent residence in this world. They seek it as a world that either they or their clients could own and govern from afar with human assistance. That is why such great care has been taken to study human psychology, human physiology, and your reproductive process, as well as the biological hazards that exist on Earth. That is one of the reasons that plant samples have been taken and the world has been observed for such a very long time. It is perhaps surprising for you to realize that an advanced technological race would have difficulty adapting to your world, believing that their science and medical technology would have overcome the difficulties involved here. But alas, so great are these difficulties that there is no race who has evolved in sterile or near sterile environments that could easily withstand the biological agents that exist here. Even the illnesses of your animals could affect them. So great is this hazard that in recent history few races have attempted colonization of this world. But now the collectives see an advantage, for humanity has built networks that they can use. Worldwide communications, worldwide resource extraction, and a sufficient level of technology that can, at a basic level, interface with what they use and rely upon. Humanity is also developing greater sources of destructive power, and should this power be fully cultivated, then interventions such as this kind would be more difficult to attempt. Lastly, there is the deterioration of your natural environment, which is threatening many of the very resources that the intervention seeks. That is why the intervention has gone into its mature phase in the last half-century, an accelerated phase involving 4 fundamental activities: the attempt to persuade certain individuals in positions of power in government, commerce, and religion, to establish a physical presence and familiarity within the world itself, to influence religious views and tendencies, which also includes the promotion of human conflict, and the program of hybridization to establish adapted beings in a human form who are allegiant to the intervention and who can assume greater governing powers here in the world. These 4 interrelated programs represent the activities of the collectives. Resource explorers operate in a more simple manner by taking things they need from the world as they are able to find them. But the collectives have a more complex and long-range plan in establishing power and influence within the world. They recognize the strengths and weaknesses of the human family and your tendency towards conflict. They recognize that to gain human allegiance, which is their goal, they must present themselves as capable of assisting and even saving humanity from its own problems and from the great challenges that it now faces. The intervention will present itself, therefore, in a more enlightened form, as spiritual agents, as those who have overcome war and conflict, who live in peace, and who have achieved technology that humanity can now use and, indeed, now needs in order to rescue its environment and to bring a cessation of conflict in the world. Yet this all represents deception, for the collectives actually seek to increase human conflict, to weaken the strongest worldly powers, and to gain allegiance through human failure, allegiance and a reliance upon their presence. Their interbreeding program is not only to establish individuals in positions of power, but also to condition and to program those that they take to become the intervention's representatives and apologists, those who will promote their intervention and the peoples of the world having direct access to these intervening powers, bypassing their governments, bypassing human authority figures, in order to establish direct contact with those forces who are conditioning people to believe that the intervention is here on their behalf. Humanity is facing the loss of its freedom and sovereignty in this world to intervening forces from the universe. They want humanity to believe in them and to serve them. They want humanity to work for them. They will promise anything, offer anything, and do anything to achieve this goal. Do not ever think that this world is owned by anyone else, that any other race in the universe has rights to this world or has any special privilege for visiting this world, or can make any claims of ownership to this world, or any claims of authorship for human evolution. This is your planet of origin. It has been given to you by the Creator of the universe with the hope and the desire that you would prosper here and maintain this world as the precious resource that it is. It has been given so that it may sustain you through your difficult phases of development, and so that it may sustain you as you emerge into a greater community of intelligent life, where such worlds of biological diversity are rare. The greater darkness in the world today is hidden. It is deceptive. It portrays itself as benign and beneficial. It encourages people to acquiesce to its presence and to share in its mission here. It is not a spiritual force. It is a physical force. It is not comprised of multidimensional beings. It is comprised of physical beings from the universe who present themselves in such a way that people will think the visitors are mystical, spiritual, and have magical powers. The only powers they have are their technology and their ability to convince you through persuasion in the mental environment. You now have a global civilization, diffracted, conflicted, destructive, heedless, and irresponsible. But it is a world community nonetheless. You have global communication, you have global commerce, and for many people, a growing global awareness. It is at this point that intervention will be attempted. It is at this point that humanity becomes a prize to be claimed. Those who will come here and are here already cannot live in the biologically complex world that you inhabit and to which you are adapted. They need human assistance. They need human allegiance. They need human participation in order to gain sovereignty and control here. You would become a client state to another power and would have to be governed from afar. This is not beneficial for you in any way. Yet the visitors will cast themselves as saviors and rescuers of humanity. They will utilize your naivete. They will capitalize on your expectations, and they will seek to wholly benefit from your trust. Therefore, it is our sincere desire that our words can serve as an antidote to their presence and to their manipulation and abuse. For your rights are being violated. Your territory is being infiltrated. Your governments are being persuaded, and your religious ideologies and impulses are being redirected. There must be a voice of truth regarding this, and we can only trust that you can receive this voice of truth. We can only hope that the persuasion has not gone too far. Do you think the universe is full of enlightened beings? How can you be so foolish to think these things? Do you think other races are fascinated with humanity, as if your idiosyncrasies are just a delight to other races? Do you really believe that advanced technology liberates you from having to survive in a competitive environment and having to gain access to resources? Clearly, living in joyful expectation is not adequate, for there are indeed forces at hand that are not benevolent and are using human beings for purposes that do not support the well-being of humanity. What is called for is responsibility, wisdom, certain forms of empowerment, and a greater understanding of what intelligence is and how it interacts in its different forms. Never think that any race in the universe that travels for commerce is spiritually advanced. Those who seek commerce seek advantage. Those who travel from world to world, those who are resource explorers, those who seek to plant their own flags are not what you would consider to be spiritually advanced. The collectives recognize the strengths and weaknesses of the human family and your tendency towards conflict. They recognize that to gain human allegiance, which is their goal, they must present themselves as capable of assisting and even saving humanity from its own problems and from the great challenges that it now faces. The intervention will present itself, therefore, in a more enlightened form, as spiritual agents, as those who have overcome war and conflict, who live in peace, and who have achieved technology that humanity can now use and, indeed, now needs in order to rescue its environment and to bring a cessation of conflict in the world. Yet this all represents deception, for the collectives actually seek to increase human conflict, to weaken the strongest worldly powers, and to gain allegiance through human failure, allegiance and a reliance upon their presence. Humanity has enemies in the universe. They are not opposed to you, but they seek what you have. They seek to take what you have without the use of undue force, relying upon the powers of persuasion and sowing the seeds of division amongst a contentious humanity. They seek this world for themselves. They do not seek to destroy you, but to use you as a workforce for them. It is something very subtle in its application, but very real in its effect. They are competitors for the world, this precious world, such a rare gem in the universe. You have no idea how rare it is and how valuable it is to so many races who would seek to use its biological and mineral wealth for their own purposes. You are like the native tribe being discovered by the outside world, of which you know nothing about. The intruders will not seek conquest outright, but a willful submission on your part. Once you have depleted this world sufficiently, once you have altered the climate of the world sufficiently, once you have destroyed civilization sufficiently through conflict, competition, and war, they will arrive. They are here already, furthering human conflict, sowing the seeds of your undoing, not to crush you, but to have you submit. This is how intelligent races gain control of worlds that are stewarded by races who are less intelligent and who are conflicted among themselves. The use of force is not employed because it would destroy the very assets of the world and would destroy humanity as a workforce. For those who seek your world cannot live here. They cannot breathe your atmosphere. They are unprotected against the biological contamination of the world. They need you, and they will offer you anything they can as an inducement for you to allow them to guide you, promising to save you from your great and ever-growing calamity, promising to give you peace and equanimity, freedom from war and conflict, saying that they themselves have no war. And yet it is all but a deception, you see. It is all a powerful deception given to an unsuspecting humanity, a humanity that is mesmerized by its newfound technology and who will be so impressed by demonstrations of technology at a greater level, a humanity that is desperate for answers to the great waves of change that are coming to the world, a humanity that seeks power and wealth even as it depletes its own world beyond recognition. You must come to understand this, or you will think the universe is just a big, empty place for you to explore and to get whatever you want, and to replace whatever you have destroyed or consumed here on earth. Humanity stands at great peril here, extremely vulnerable, destroying relentlessly your self-sufficiency in this world, which invites intervention from beyond. an opportunity to make humanity dependent upon foreign powers, to gain control of this world without the use of force, to conquer the world without the usual methods of conquest that humanity assumes and still employs. There are only two things that could unite the human family. It is environmental collapse, or it is competition from beyond. Both are happening now, one more apparently than the other. Yet they are both underway. You cannot stop them entirely until you have gained a greater strength individually and collectively. If this were understood, war would end tomorrow. War would end tomorrow, and the avenues of cooperation would be established for everyone's survival, freedom, and benefit. Humanity has now established an infrastructure that foreign races can utilize. That is why intervention of this nature has never occurred before. Humanity has global communications, global commerce. It has taken control of the world sufficiently that another race can step in to take advantage of your accomplishments and your development. Even at this moment, people are being turned to the intervention, to serve it, believing it will bring peace and equanimity to a world of escalating uncertainty and discord. Already, the intervention is gaining adherents and representatives, thinking they, the intervention, are representing some kind of enlightened force from beyond the world, when in fact they are only competitors seeking to take advantage of the world. The intervention does not have military assets. It relies upon persuasion and dissension to gain control. It does this because conquest is not allowed in this part of the universe, a reality that you know nothing about. Besides, advanced races have found other ways to gain access to the resources of the universe without the use of force. People are being taken against their will. Some of them are never returned. They are being used for experimentation to create hybrids, those who look like human beings but who are united with the intervention. It is a hideous project. It is dangerous. It is being fostered by the enemies of humanity. Those who seek domination here have no value for your freedom. They are not interested in your concepts. They think you are primitive. They think you are destructive. They think you are out of control. They think you are ridiculous because of all the transmissions that continue to be sent out into the universe for decades and decades. You think you live in isolation in the universe. Even your scientists think that no one can get here, as if the entire universe is limited by humanity's scientific understanding. You assume you have special importance in this universe. You think that any visitation would be beneficial to you. But the history of intervention in your own world proves otherwise. Visitors arrive for their own purposes, to gain resources, to gain land and property. They seek to conquer in all cases. This has been the history of intervention in your world, and so do not assume it is different in the universe. The true allies of humanity would never do these things. They would only send their wisdom and their warning, which they have already done in a series of briefings for the human family. Intervention is unethical, it is corrupting, it is circumventing the power and authority of the native people. It is usurpation in its most deceptive form. Do not be persuaded. Do not be beguiled by an advanced technology. Do not think that those in the universe are not driven by the same needs that drive the human family. For advanced societies everywhere are in desperate pursuit of resources and must trade and barter and travel great distances to achieve what they need. It is a complex situation of which humanity knows nothing at all. This is the great challenge, operating on two fronts. It is a great warning, but humanity has the power to thwart intervention once it learns how the universe around it really works. Humanity has arrived at a whole new turning point, a great threshold, the greatest threshold that any intelligent race will face in the universe. as it faces environmental decline at home and intervention from beyond. It is not something that government leaders alone can deal with. It will require the support and awareness of people everywhere. Yet the hour is late. Humanity does not have much time to prepare. Every year is significant. Every life is important. Every person has purpose and meaning. For you have all come to face the world and to serve the world under these very conditions that we speak of here today. You will be fighting a battle on two fronts, a battle to preserve the world and to offset the damage that has already been done to the stability of this world. And you will be warding off intervention, making public all of its demonstrations in the world. It is not a battle between armies. It is a battle of will and purpose, a battle of determination, a battle of awareness, clarity, and objectivity against opposing forces who have already prepared for the intervention here. They know much more about you than you know about them. Here, enough people must become strong and resistant to this if humanity is going to preserve its freedom into the future. Therefore, you are entering a great age of unity and cooperation. That is the next great work of the human family, to preserve the world and to protect its freedom from foreign intervention and persuasion. Do not accept gifts from the intervention, for they are only here to seduce you. Do not accept promises of peace, power, and equanimity or spiritual fulfillment, for such promises are empty and are only here to seduce you. Do not acquiesce and think that humanity is hopeless without this intervention, for that is not true, and that will only serve those who oppose you and who will take from you everything that you have. Do not think that humanity cannot preserve itself here, for it has many advantages in the universe of which it is unaware. Here, every person must participate. Every person must become aware to some extent. Every person must realize that it is not their national security that is at risk. It is the security of the whole world. You cannot afford to have nations fail and collapse now, or fall under the persuasion of the intervention, for that would surely generate great war and conflict across the globe. For it is in the intervention's interest that humanity fight itself, defeat itself, and diminish itself. They will not fight you directly in this way. It is cunning. It has been used countless times before, but not always with success. For races that resist can prevail. Races that realize their great challenge will prevail. Nations that value their world, recognizing the danger that is upon them, will prevail. What else could overcome centuries-old animosity between nations, cultures, and religions, but a greater threat that seems to overwhelm all and threaten all equally? There is redemption here if you can see it, if you can realize it, if you have the heart and the courage to face it and to learn what it really means and how humanity can prevail, both within this world and from the intervention beyond. Technology alone will not save you from resource depletion, and resource depletion will undo your technology. Though the visitors have a superior technology, the success of their entire mission rests upon their ability to persuade and to encourage human allegiance. You have the power to resist this. You have the power to see through the deception. Do not think that your subjugation represents your destiny. Do not believe that another race will come and govern you with wisdom and compassion. Do not think that gaining ever higher levels of technology will assure you any greater advantage in the greater community. Beyond the requirements of establishing your unity, your self-sufficiency, and your discretion, Technology becomes ever more hazardous. It begins to work against everything you have created for yourself. God's will is for humanity to unite, to preserve the world, and to prepare for its future in the greater community. A future where humanity's freedom will be challenged repeatedly. A future where humanity will be seduced by the offers of alien technology. A future with many hazards, but a future where humanity must maintain human freedom and sovereignty within this world. Lose this, and you lose everything. All the accomplishments of humanity. Humanity did not need to know of the greater community, and humanity was not facing a world in decline in previous eras. But now you are facing these things, and you must prepare. The first area of activity of the visitors is to influence individuals in positions of power and authority. Because the visitors do not want to destroy anything in the world or harm the world's resources, they seek to gain influence over those whom they perceive to be in positions of power, within government and religion primarily. They seek contact, but only with certain individuals. They have the power to make this contact, and they have the power of persuasion. Not all of whom they contact will be persuaded, but many will be. The promise of greater power, greater technology, and world domination will intrigue and incite many individuals. And it is these individuals with whom the visitors will seek to establish a liaison. Until there is a strong voice resisting the intervention that is made known in public, it will appear to outside observers that the intervention is being welcomed by humanity and is being advocated by humanity. Already, the intervention has many speakers and representatives, but few vocal critics. Even your vocal criticism creates problems for the intervention. Even for people to speak out and say, no, this is wrong. We are being visited against our will. We are being persuaded and manipulated against our will. This must not happen. We do not welcome this, and we demand that the visitors leave. Until these voices are heard, it will appear to governing bodies and to those who compete with these collectives that they are here with human consent. Even to arouse a public outcry would have great benefit here for you. Those who are intervening in your world today want to gain control of this world for obvious reasons and for reasons that are not so obvious. They see this world as a great prize, rich in resources, governed by a race that they believe is unruly and unworthy to be the stewards of such a wondrous place. You must understand that they regard you as a resource as well. To them, you are a potential asset. You must stop to consider what this really means. It means that they consider you to be a biological resource, part of a network of resources that exist within this world. In this, they view you much the same way that you view animals that you use as a resource. You use these animals for a variety of reasons, we understand. This is common in the greater community in worlds where such animals can be used as a food resource. We understand that you use your animals in many different ways to provide many different kinds of benefits and substances and so forth. This is how you appear to those who are visiting your world, to the intervention. They do not consider you their equal. They consider you their resource. What you may not understand is that each year thousands of people are taken and not returned to the world. These people are not simply conditioned, they are kept. Some of them perish in captivity. Some of them do not survive the process of their capturing. Some become sick and die. Those that cannot survive and are still seen as useful to the intervention are used as a biological resource. That means that their blood, their body parts, everything is used according to its value in the greater community. In the greater community, biological resources such as blood, plasma, DNA, bone marrow, skin, and body organs can be used for their chemical substances. From these, medicines are made. From these, new life forms are bred. These substances are valuable commodities in certain parts of the greater community. If those who are captured and not returned survive, they will be used for other purposes. Should the intervention gain complete control of your world, many people who are considered to be undesirable or who do not fit into the social patterns established through the intervention will be used as biological resources in this way. Perhaps this is shocking, but you can understand this, for this is how you treat your animals as biological resources, to be used for food, for clothing, for medicines, for fuel. In the greater community, biological resources are very valuable because they can be used and altered for a variety of purposes, as we have mentioned, for medicinal purposes, for life support purposes, and for the breeding and generation of new species. This is why many of your animals are taken. They are not simply taken to provide blood products for the interbreeding program. They are taken because these blood products themselves are highly valuable and can be traded very successfully. In technological societies such as the collectives, biological resources are extremely valuable and difficult to find in the greater community. Your world is viewed as a biological storehouse. So while the visitors want the mineral resources of your world, they also want things that are much more elemental to the needs of life. They need water, they need oxygen, they need blood. They need the resistance factors in blood. They need plasma. They need the biological elements that constitute life and that are fundamental to life everywhere. This means that they need you as a biological resource. It is one thing to consider that your world will be used to serve other powers, but the idea that you will be used to serve other powers is another matter altogether and represents a further violation of your fundamental rights. This, of course, is entirely hidden from their public agenda. Those that they persuade to become their adherents and their representatives will never be told these things. Part of their pacification program is to assure you that they are here for your good and for your redemption and for the preservation of the world. But as we have so often said, it is the preservation of the world for their needs. This, of course, would never be revealed to those who are being pacified or to those who even today may stand as representatives and apologists for the intervention. But this is so very true. You may wonder, where have all the people gone who have disappeared and not returned? Did they all run away? Some indeed were the victims of human violence. Some indeed have run away. But we are talking about many people worldwide who have disappeared without a trace, without a clue. We know this because this is evident in the collective's intrusions in other worlds. Somehow, mysteriously, individuals begin to disappear at the early stages of these interventions, and people who recognize that these disappearances are happening will think it is due to the normal but unfortunate circumstances within their own cultures. Should the intervention take full hold and an occupation be established here completely, then the human population will be reduced into an efficient working class. How will this be accomplished without producing outrage and revolution among the human population? It will be accomplished through the disappearance of people. It will be accomplished by the isolation of those who are considered to be uncooperative or dissenting. They will be taken away, to be seen no more. And while there will be the appearance of normalcy in human affairs, behind the scenes everything will be changed and will be managed by a different set of powers. It is hoped by the collectives that this can be accomplished for as long as possible and that a revolution will not begin, for that would be very costly to their endeavors and very costly to humanity as well. The visitors are here to do business. You are part of the business. Your hands, your eyes, your reproductive organs, your blood, your plasma, your biochemistry, this is all part of their business. To them, you are like intelligent livestock, useful, interesting, and commercially important. At the outset, they will treat you with deference, those of you who may encounter them face to face, but they will give you no power. They will not give you a choice. They will only try to convince you of the wisdom of their ways and the necessity of their presence in the world. And should you decline or should you resist, they will make life difficult for you, or they will discard you for later use. Some of those, we understand, who have not returned to the world were those who fought against them and were eliminated as a result. How do we know these things? We know them because we understand the collectives. We understand their legal commerce and we understand their illegal commerce. They want to use every part of the world, and they want to use every part of you, just like you want to use every part of the cow or the sheep or any other domesticated animal that you breed for your own purposes. In their attempt to breed a new leadership for humanity, a hybridized person, they need all of these biological resources that we are describing. What we are speaking of here is the most hidden and secret part of their agenda, the part that they will never reveal to you willingly, the part that you may never see without great assistance. This is the most secret of their activities. They sell biological products on what you would call a black market in the universe. But the value of these products and the demand for them is indeed significant. In most places where commerce has been established, such as in your vicinity, such trade is illegal, for it is considered to be morally and ethically reprehensible. But with so many technological societies existing in the universe, and biological resources such as exist in your world being rare as they are, the demand for these fundamental elements is considerable. Many technologically advancing nations have outstripped their own world's biological resources to the extent that they must find them elsewhere, and they must trade and barter for them as one of their primary endeavors. This is not simply food products, minerals and metals and elements such as this. It is also the need for biological products such as we have described, which are abundant in your world and which are abundant within the human family. So when someone asks, what do they want? The appropriate answer is they want your world and its resources, and they want you and your resources. As we have said, this is the most hidden of their agendas, but it is necessary for you to know because this makes the violation complete. The visitors do not hate humanity. They are not cruel and murderous in the sense that you might think. They just view you as a resource the way you view your animals as a resource. To them, though you have intelligence, they consider that you are irredeemably chaotic and unruly, and they do not understand your deeper motivations. They see your technology as being in a rather adolescent phase, and they look at your destructive behaviors with concern, anxiety, and repulsion. Being without knowledge, the spiritual foundation, they do not see that what they are perpetrating upon your world is ethically or morally reprehensible. It is merely an opportunity to fulfill their practical necessities. We have been reluctant to tell you certain things because we do not want to lose your attention. We do not want you to turn away in denial, thinking that you cannot face these matters. So we have tried to be extremely careful in the way that we have presented the situation. But in spite of this, there are certain things you must know and that you cannot readily see from your vantage point. We had to learn about these realities ourselves, though we had assistance such as we are providing for you. But the reprehensible nature of the collectives and their lack of morality and ethics is something we have had to face. That is why we avoid the collectives in our own worlds, where they cannot penetrate. There are many nations in the universe that have created alliances to protect themselves from collectives such as these, particularly in well-inhabited areas of the galaxy. This is why many of the collective's activities are governed by trade unions and regional governing powers and authorities. They are held in check by many other forces who do not want to fall under their persuasion or their control. Even many of their trading partners look at them with anxiety, And even if they are forced to engage in commerce with collectives, they must protect themselves from the collective's influence. To know more, visit alliesofhumanity.org and newmessage.org.